Hello again, baseball fans. Mitch Gatzke here with episode 31 of Ducks on the Pod. I don't have a whole lot for you today, just a few loose ends and leftovers, things I didn't want to squeeze into episode 30 last week. Let's send it over to Hamilton Porter to get us started. I've fallen all the way down to 5th place in the Ducks on the Pod Fantasy League, and I've been kept out of the top 4 for over a month now. The league's lone woman is currently enjoying first place and an impressive 9.5-point lead. Her team is loaded. Matt Carpenter, Javi Baez, and Travis Shaw are leading the way for her. Andrew Benintendi, Yasiel Puig, and Anthony Rendon have helped out quite a bit as well. Max Scherzer is a big reason why she leads in ERA and WHIP, so congrats to Mila at the top. Then it's Nader, who loves talking about making a trade but never offers you any players that you actually want, so nothing ever gets done. Anth is lurking in 3rd place, ready to make a run after clawing his way up the standings the past couple of months. He continues to get players back healthy, and he sent me a text the other day saying he's got his eye on first. We'll see. Wooly is in 4th with a slugging team that leaves a little bit to be desired on the pitching side of things. I'm in 5th. Ryan is just a few points behind me. And Seth is currently in 7th. I want to talk about his team just a little bit because he's going to have a tough time deciding who he'd like to keep around for next year. His roster is stacked with young talent: Hoskins, Albies, Andujar, Bregman, Schwarber, Acuna, Altuve, and Devers on the DL. Vlad Jr. Just waiting for that call-up at this point. He's got a killer 1-2 punch in Luis Severino and Jose Barrios heading up the pitching department. So I'm a big fan of Seth, and I'm hoping, I obviously am aware that he can't keep all of these guys. So a lot of them I'm keeping on my list of people to watch for next year. Some of the absolute best young players in the game, and they're all concentrated on Seth's roster. Somehow, though, he's still sitting down there in 7th place. We'll have to see if he can work his way back up. And I have to say, sorry to Reed, Norm, Kirk, Ev, and Drew, but you're all under 100 points in a miraculous run. At this point, it just doesn't seem very likely. The trade deadline was noon on Saturday. There had been a couple of major deals made already this season, a little bit earlier, but not much came from the deadline. Still, we're in for an exciting finish, I think. 3/4 of the league still having something to play for. Tight standings up there at the top. More updates to come on the Ducks on the Pod Fantasy Baseball League. Believe it or not, the DotP Fantasy League is treating me better than my NL-only league, the Moonlight Graham. It's been an up-and-down summer for me and the Country Strong gang, mostly down as of late. About 3 weeks ago, we started falling behind, and we've been unable to recover. And with so many teams log-jammed in the middle of the standings and the money spots pretty much sewn up already, I finally made that difficult decision none of us want to be faced with. It's time to build toward next year. Now, you might remember from last season me talking about an absolute blockbuster of a trade that I made with Pete, the guy who was in first at the time but struggling to pull away for good. 10 players switched teams in that trade. I sent Pete A.J. Pollock, Sean Doolittle, Will Myers, Seung-Hwan Oh, and Jim Johnson for Michael Conforto, Joey Votto, Yu Darvish, Zach Davies, and Jimmy Nelson. When I said blockbuster, I wasn't kidding. Well, Pete was unfortunately unable to come away with what would have been his first league title, and isn't it funny how things work out? Here he is, yet again, at the top of the standings, and yet again in need of some reinforcements to bring home that first trophy. Well, my players aren't doing much good at the bottom of the standings, so might as well ship them off to Pete in return for some guys I can build around for next year, right? Right. So, because of league rules, I am unable to keep Paul Goldschmidt for next year. Might as well trade him, right? Right. I mean, sure, he's not quite been himself this season from a production standpoint, but his track record is well established, and he's still easily a top 5 player at his position in his league. Goldschmidt's market value is high despite his high cost as a first-round keeper. Kirby Yates is now the closer in San Diego since Brad Hand and Adam Simber were sent to Cleveland last month. Yates strikes out a ton of batters, and his whip still begins with a decimal point. Plus, he's getting a few save opportunities now with the Padres. Pete loves closers, and he needs help with the pitching ratio stats. That'd be ERA, whip, and K per 9. Yates checks all those boxes, and even though I hated letting go of a guy I've had for a little over a year now, it had to be done. With only 5 keeper spots available, I simply wasn't going to be able to keep him anyway. So Pete got Goldschmidt and Yates from me in exchange for Clayton Kershaw and Odubel Herrera. Not quite the magnitude of trade we pulled off last summer, but still a great deal, I think. Kershaw needs no introduction on this show. If you're unfamiliar with his work, please contact me privately. Herrera, he's just a good ball player. He does most everything well, and he's flashy, which makes him seem, at least in my mind, a little bit better than he actually is. If you can't play favorites in fantasy sports, I don't know where you can play favorites. Maybe I didn't get quite the return I should have. Maybe I came out on top in this trade. I don't know, and I think it's a little too early to tell, really. But the fact is, I like the guys I got, and I only had to give up a couple of guys I wouldn't have kept anyway. At least now, with Kershaw and Herrera, I have 2 players, a pitcher and a hitter to boot, that I feel pretty confident will be members of the 2019 edition of Country Strong. It is with great pain that I share with you that the Birds of Prey were ousted from the playoffs a few weeks ago. My softball season is over. I'm upset. Even though I finished with decent numbers, one thing became clear during the latter half of the campaign. It is hard to be consistent. The numbers, 377, that's 20 for 53 with 12 runs scored and 12 runs batted in. Over the span of 18 games, like I said, decent. I only had 2 offers, and one of them was a game we got beat so badly, the mercy rule kicked in before I even got a second at bat. I will say this, I'm pretty good at first base. I got the scoops like Sean Casey. Man, the mayor could pick it with the best of them in his day. The Birds, when at full strength, were a pretty decent outfit, I'd say. The issue all summer was getting the same team to show up to every game. We technically had 2 teams, one for Tuesday, one for Wednesday. A few guys playing both, like me. A lot of guys on both rosters, lots of moving parts. We just never found that consistency that you need as a team. We did hit our stride a couple of times and rattle off a couple of wins in a row, including a good showing in the second round of the double elimination playoffs. When faced with elimination, we mercied the team on Tuesday and then won in walk-off fashion on Wednesday to extend our season another week. What happened that following week, we won't talk about. Most importantly, I had fun. That's really all that matters at this point in my career, unfortunately. Just getting out there and being active is a win in itself. Anything beyond that is a bonus. And with that in mind, I'd say the season was a success. Okay, so I know a lot of people don't get into this, but I sure as hell do. To me, the Home Run Derby is baseball's night in the national spotlight. There are no games, so fans aren't splintered into 30 different groups watching their hometown team. You've heard it before, and there's many reasons for it, which I won't get into now, but baseball is still a regional sport, consumed mostly by fans who care mostly, if not only, about their favorite team. But for 2 days in July, baseball fans are united, all watching the Derby and the Midsummer Classic. In fact, there are no other sports going on at all on these 2 nights, so if you're a sports fan of any kind, it truly is baseball or nothing for a couple of days there. The Derby is fun. It's a breath of fresh air in a sport that all too often takes itself much too seriously. The new rules making it a timed event have done wonders, adding suspense and intrigue to an event that had become a little bit stale. We've become a bit numb to just how talented these guys are, in my opinion. So let's do an exercise. Stand somewhere and make some kind of mark so you can tell where this spot is. And now walk 450 feet in any direction. I'll wait. Okay, now look back and find your original spot. If you're not blown away by the thought of hitting a baseball so hard that it travels this far in roughly 4 seconds, then I'm not sure what I can say to you other than we probably shouldn't be friends anymore. This year's event was exciting. Alex Bregman gave Kyle Schwarber a run for his money in the first round. Rhys Hoskins upset Jesus Aguilar. Bryce Harper survived Freddie Freeman. Max Muncy continued to surprise us by ousting Javi Baez. And then things got really interesting. Schwarber snuck by Hoskins. Harper outlasted Muncy. A Schwarber-Harper final was probably the ideal matchup here, and it did not disappoint. Schwarber set a high bar. Harper started slowly and looked to be out of gas. And suddenly, he turned it on, crushing 9 homers in the final 50 seconds to pull even with Schwarber. Harper had earned the 30-second bonus, and it didn't take long for him to end things, giving the fans in Washington what looks like their only chance to celebrate winning something this year. It was fun. It was exciting. It was obviously helped greatly by the hometown hero making a run at the title. Still, it's little more than a bunch of guys hitting a lot of really long dingers. It's batting practice on steroids, which is probably the single worst analogy I could use on a baseball podcast. I love it, though, and even my roommate, who's not at all a baseball fan, got mildly into it. Hopefully, that's a sign of things to come for one of baseball's 2 biggest showcase events. Anybody else find it weird that the All-Star Game turned into a breaking news event with Manny Machado being shopped around live on TV? I mean, selfies with Matt Kemp at second base, Ken Rosenthal butting in to tell us it's definitely happening, but not yet because it's not supposed to be done like this because it'd be weird, but here we all are and it's happening and it's basically been done and now it's really weird. I don't know. It was just awkward to watch, I thought. It really distracted the audience from what was an entertaining, albeit slow developing game. You may have heard that this game broke all sorts of single-game home run records. Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Wilson Contreras, Trevor Story, Gene Segura, Christian Yelich, Scooter Gennett, Alex Bregman, George Springer, and Joey Votto all went deep. I was actually upset. I'm upset when Michael Brantley drove in Segura with a sac fly in the 10th. That was the only run of the 14 that were scored that did not come as a result of the long ball. And while I'm not really into all the home run record stuff, that I think is something that would be pretty cool. The best part of the All-Star Game is that it's over with and now it doesn't matter. We don't have to think about it anymore. Not that it's not fun to look back and cherish the memories of what we witnessed. It's just that it was extremely annoying when we'd have to harken back in late October to remind ourselves why the team in the World Series with the worst record is hosting Game 7. Let's thank the baseball gods for not having to do that anymore. All right, baseball fans, episode 30's trivia question was a softball for you. If you pay close enough attention, then you would already know that the Mets Citi Field is the only Major League ballpark with foul poles that are not painted yellow. They are, in fact, orange. So that one was easy. This one is a doozy. Good luck. When Chris Sale and Max Scherzer took the mound to start this year's Midsummer Classic, it became just the second time in All-Star Game history that the starting pitching matchup has been the same in consecutive years. Which begs the follow-up questions, when was the first one, and who are the pitchers? And I'm sorry, but my dad couldn't even get this one, and he's the king of trivia. If he ain't getting it, no one is. So I'm just going to give away the answer. You got to go all the way back to 1939 and 1940, when the Yankees' Red Ruffing squared off with the Reds' Paul Derringer in consecutive All-Star games at Yankee Stadium and Old Sportsman's Park in St. Louis. Ruffing won 6 World Series championships, missed 2 seasons while serving in World War II, and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1967. Derringer was outstanding in 1939, finishing 3rd in MVP voting after posting a 25-7 record and a 2.93 ERA in 301 innings that summer. These are not 2 guys who simply got lucky a couple years in a row. Just because you don't know their names doesn't mean that they're random. A name you probably should recognize helped to relieve roughing on both of those all-star occasions. That name, Bob Feller. That's it for episode number 31 of Ducks on the Pod. Like I said, not too much this week, just some odds and ends. It is my birthday weekend, so I'm going to go have some fun. Until next time, I'm Mitch Gatzke reminding you, keep your glove on the dirt, your bat off your shoulder, and always keep your eye on the ball.
See you later. Adios!
See ya!
Goodbye! Be gone!
Back, gone.